Still no Zion down at the bubble with the Pelicans. Alvin Gentry, head coach, is speaking a little bit about that. But down in New Orleans, who covers the city, is from WDSU sports anchor down there, Fletcher Mackel, who joins us here, is back with us here on Off the Bench. Welcome back, Fletch. Thanks for the time. Good morning.
No, good morning. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Anything we can find out on Zion? I know they've deemed it a personal matter and a family matter, but is there anything that has come out on what is going on with Big Z right now?
No, and I'll say this, and I go back and forth with this because I've seen a lot of social media, and I know, Twitter is not the real world, they say. But I do I lean more to, they have told us what's going on. Here's the thing. If Zion had left the bubble and it was radio silence and we were wondering, is it his knee? Is he out of shape? Did he get another injury? We know what it is. And I do think there's a certain level of respect that, yes, in today's 24/7 social media news cycle, we want to know. But I feel like when they say it's, and I'm not trying to give the Pelicans, when I say they, a break, but when they say it's an emergency family medical matter, well, that's what they told us. I mean, that sounds to me, and I'm just being presumptive here, a potential death in the family or a sudden heart attack or a stroke. Well, do we need to know that? Do we need to know potentially if his father suffered a heart attack or if his mother had a medical emergency? They told us it's a medical emergency and he left the bubble. And I've seen a lot of people on social media saying they need to be more transparent. And it's like, is that not transparent? Is that going to make you feel better if you know that his father had a medical emergency? That they've told us that's what it is. The only thing I would say is that maybe this week, he left late last week. Maybe this week we could get more of a timetable on his potential return, when that may come. Will it be before the game starts or after? Because those first two games are doozies, so to say, to quote Groundhog Day.
Yeah, so it's interesting, Fletcher, because I agree with you. I don't think I want to know, and the silence actually makes me a bit worried from like a human empathetic standpoint that it could be bad. But is it not one of the most shocking kind of turn of events that you can remember in recent kind of media coverage? And think about how hyper competitive NBA scoops are, right? When you talk about Woj and Shams and all the memes around that and them going toe to toe constantly. Like, are you shocked that nobody has just gone ahead and published that story or figured it out?
You know what? It's a good point, T-Bob. And part of me feels like, yes, because I do think that it's one of those things that people, in this cycle, you think that people, to get that scoop, that's what's made Woj and Shams and the Woj bomb and everything like that. But I do think when you just said, when you're talking about the human side of it, I do think there's a little something different to that. And the example that I tell people is this. Look, I grew up with Michelle Varisco, who's Steve Gleason's wife. I've known that family my entire life. And back in 2011, a lot of us found out through family sources in early 2011 that Steve had been diagnosed with ALS. But nobody's going to break that story until he says he has ALS, and he did it in September. Even though you referenced Jeff Duncan, he knew about it. A lot of us knew about it.
Yeah.
But I think out of an abundance of respect and privacy, nobody's going to do that. I think at this point there are definitely people in that bubble that have found out what it is and why. And I think that, and I don't know, so I think it's probably more of the human side of it, that maybe this isn't a basketball, break it, I got the scoop type story.
So they're 8 days away from playing the Jazz, opening up with the Pelicans and the Jazz there. How do you feel about New Orleans going into this instance? Because there was a lot of feeling around him with Zion. This is when Z was with him, that they were in shape, they had been playing, and that they were going into this bubble atmosphere with some confidence. How do you feel about them entering the July 30th resumption date?
Well, that's what I said, Jordy. I think that the first two games, I feel good because I do think they were, if the season had not stopped, I felt very confident with the way Zion had returned and the way the team had kind of overcome that horrible start and the injury to Zion, the injury to Favors missing time because of the death in his family, an injury to Redick. I do feel like they were going to maybe make a strong push because their schedule was so easy. That being said, their first two games in the bubble, Utah, which is a team they just never, even going back before Zion, they never matched up well against because Gobert can suffocate any big you throw out there. the way Utah plays is infuriating, how slow they play, walking it up the floor, just grind it out defensively. It's always been a bad matchup for Alvin Gentry and his pace system. And then the second game is against the Clippers, and I think the Clippers are the favorites to win it all. So if Zion doesn't return for the start and they're 0-2, I think that it's over with. And then they have to start considering how much they play Drew Holiday, how much they play Zion when he returns. Now, if they get off to a 1-1 start or a 2-0 start, I think they're going to have their foot on the accelerator and can make a serious run to leapfrog Portland and Memphis to get in. But I do think they're pretty confident with Drew Holiday and J.J. Redick and Derek Favors. And I do think they're certainly one of the darlings of the bubble, so to say, even with the Zion setback. I think they're going to be a team a lot of people are paying attention to, at least early on, before we start getting into the playoffs and talking about the real championship contenders.
Hey, yeah, so Fletcher, you talk to this team every day, and I've seen clips of you online, and you've been talking to Gentry through like Zoom calls, et cetera, et cetera. How would you describe the team morale right now without Zion there in the bubble?
Yeah, I think really good. I think that's one of the things that we don't talk enough about is how influential J.J. Redick has been for the confidence of this team. Because it's a really weird team to figure out. You've got J.J. Redick, who's 36, and Drew Holiday, who's 30, who's a 11-year NBA veteran. And you've got a guy like Derek Favors, who came into the league at 19 years old, and he's 29 now. So you've got these been there, done that kind of guys. Even people like Etuan Moore, he's been around a long time. And then you've got kids like Jackson Hayes, who's 19 years old, and Nickeil Walker-Alexander, who's 21 years old, and even the young Lakers players. I mean, we forget that Lonzo Ball and Ingram are 22 and have never been in serious playoff contention type games. But I do think they have confidence because, Alvin is a really laid-back guy, and he's not, he's definitely a player's coach. He's not a yeller, screamer, kind of put a lot of pressure on his team. And that's good and bad, but that's good right now. And then you've got these confident veterans. J.J. Redick's never missed the playoffs. Drew Holiday's a confident guy. So I would say they are as confident. Now, without Zion, I still think it's a tough road to hoe, so to say. But I do think they're a confident team, listening to them talk every day, and I think they're ready to see what they can do in these 8 games when they start on the 30th.
Yeah, and look, the starting lineup, even without Zion, still feels very talented. Who do you think is most important to step up in his absence? Is it Lonzo Ball, who was playing some of the best basketball in the entirety of the NBA before the season got suspended? Is it Brandon Ingram getting back to that all-star form? Who's most important?
Yeah, I would say if Zion's not there, especially in those first 2 games, they're going to have to get Brandon Ingram, the all-star Brandon Ingram, that should be the most improved player in the NBA this season.
Yep.
And he's going to have to really, especially offensively, carry them. And so I would say that's what you're going to have to see. Early in the season, Ingram, when Zion was out for 44 games, Ingram emerged as a true all-star and an elite scoring threat from anywhere on the floor. And I think that's what they're going to have to get back to, especially against Utah that can be stingy defensively, and against the Clippers team that is truly loaded for bear with a great coach in Doc Rivers. So I would say that if Zion's not back, it'll be a heavy dose of Ingram. But I hope Zion can maybe potentially make it back and really give them a chance to get into the playoffs. Because a first-round matchup, I don't care if they go out quick. Lakers, Pelicans, Zion, Anthony Davis, LeBron. Talk about must-see TV. That would be fantastic.
From the NBC affiliate down in New Orleans, Fletcher Mackel joining us here on Off the Bench, ESPN Baton Rouge, New Orleans, and Alexandria. The NFL announced yesterday that they are going to training camp with limited roster, trimming it down from 90 to 80 participants. T-Bob and I were talking in hour number 1, and T had a good point. This probably favors New Orleans because of how confident they were in their roster. How do you feel about that going into next week?
Yeah, look, I looked at some of those dates. The first time they're going to put the pads on, if a lot of the reports are correct that we're seeing, it's going to be something like 10 days before they play their first game or 2 weeks before they play their first game, before they go full pads. The ramp-up period with the testing, getting guys back in shape, helmets and shells, to go to full pads like 2 weeks before you play, it certainly benefits. It reminds me of 2011, the lockout year, and I know players keep saying it's not the same. It's the same in a certain way. Look at a team like Carolina. New head coach, new offensive coordinator, new quarterback, a ton of new players. They haven't practiced one day together. That's not great. And if anything, I look at game one and say, I know that, Tom Brady's in 20 plus years and is the greatest quarterback in NFL history, but nonetheless, the fact that he will have very limited time on the field with his receivers to find the rhythm, to find the synergy, that certainly benefits the Saints, because I think Drew Brees and Michael Thomas can complete that slant pass in their sleep, and this team knows what they're doing and how to do it. So, yeah, if you're going to have, well, they are going to have a really condensed, no preseason games and in a strange preseason period, I certainly think that benefits the teams that have been there. Even a team like the Packers that had turmoil this year, they didn't have a lot of a turnover in their organization. Minnesota, the Saints, the Chiefs, the Seahawks. I think teams that have consistent rosters without a lot of turnover are going to be the ones that at least come out the gate, better than some of these newer versions of what we're seeing in the NFL. Tampa Bay, Carolina, and some of the other teams. New England with Cam Newton as their new quarterback. I think that the preseason would have been beneficial to some of those teams.
Fletcher Mackel, thank you for the time this morning, man. We'll talk again soon.
All right, thank you all for having me.
Thanks, Fletcher. You the man.
Fletcher Mackel checking in from New Orleans this morning. We'll play a game of Would You Rather Wednesday next.